What's up, guys? I'm Captain Mike, and welcome to my rigging station. We are going to be talking about Florida Keys patch reef fishing, an incredibly popular fishery down here throughout the Keys, and for good reason. The variety, the opportunities, they're really endless on the patch reefs. You know, it's something that I've talked a lot about through different episodes of Florida Sport Fishing TV that we film. On our new series, Captain Mike's Rigging Station, I've talked about patch reef fishing and through a lot of different seminars and stuff like that. But I want to take all of it and just give it straight up to you right here, you know, and help you be a more successful Florida Keys patch reef fisherman. Because if you're going to do it, you might as well make the most of it. And I found through trial and error, you know, I've learned a lot of different things that are working and a lot of stuff that just doesn't work. And, you know, I want to share that with you, really what's working for us. But before I go any further, I also want to remind you, look, if something's working for you, stick with it. If you're having success on the reef, catching big snappers, groupers, everything's working out for you, stick with it. Okay, share your success with us. You know, I'm not saying our way is the only way. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat. I just want to share, like I said, how we do things in order to maximize on every patch reef trip that we do. And understand these patch reefs, right? What are we talking about here? It's one of the largest barrier reef systems in the entire world, and certainly one of the healthiest and most vibrant coral reef systems anywhere. So we're really, really privileged here in the Florida Keys to have access to this fishery. And it stretches all the way from Key Largo down to Key West. So it spans the entire ocean side of the Keys. Now, what are we talking about patch reefs and what are you saying? Well, understand we've got the mainland, right? All of the Keys, the islands, and paralleling the islands, you have a natural deep water channel called Hawk Channel, and then you have a barrier reef system that slowly emerges from the bottom. And understand that Hawk Channel, 30, 40 feet deep. Okay, and then like I said, it'll slope back up into the teens as it gets up on those patches that parallel the whole coastline. And it's generally just a few miles off the beach. Okay, maybe just some areas a mile or two before you could access those patches. So it's certainly accessible for all sorts of boaters. And I can tell you, look, all you guys that are coming down to the Keys that are renting boats, okay, 98% of you are going to the patch reefs. I see you out there all of the time. It's the easiest thing for rental boats to do. Again, understandably so, and for good reason. But also a lot of the people visiting the Keys, that's the first place you go as well, is right to the patches. So, you know, more people are patch reef fishing down here than all other fisheries combined. On any given day, I could be out there wreck fishing for muttons out in deeper water, and you could see the boats lined up on the patches all the way, you know, as far east and as far west as you could look, as you could see. So very, very popular fishery. And again, we have a great time when we go to the reef. I like fishing offshore. I like dolphin fishing, sword fishing, wahoo fishing. I enjoy it all, but I also enjoy the patch reef fishing. What I don't enjoy, to be honest, is catching a bunch of 8-inch yellowtails that look like they can be in someone's aquarium. That's just not my cup of tea. At this stage of my angling career, I want something that's a little bit more challenging than the 2,382 small juvenile yellowtail that are eating off my chum bag right next to the boat. Okay, not much of a challenge there. So, you know, I realize that there are obviously much larger fish and much more prized fish on the patches. And I've kind of refined our tactics on how we target those, and that's what we're going to share here as well. Those patches, you know, like I said, they're easily accessible for a wide variety of different boaters. I've seen guys out there in, you know, kayaks and wave runners, fishing off wave runners, and flat skips and bay boats and center consoles like ours, and, you know, even larger sport fish yachts. Anybody that can get out there with a patch reefs can access them, you know, and everybody's taking advantage of that. A lot of the head boats and local charter guys here, they make their living on the patches. I mean, those patches That's the staple of the Florida Keys fishery, is the patch reef fishing. Yellowtail snapper are perhaps the most popular fish in the entire world. Who hasn't heard of it? Yellowtail snapper. It's famous. It's what the Keys are known for, right? And they're all on the patch reefs, okay? Very, very fortunate. We have to protect these areas as well. You know, conservation, of course, is super important. Coral is dying, bleaching, pollution. There's all sorts of different, you know, bad things that are happening. Climate change, sea temperature rising, levels rising. I don't know, falling. I don't even know what's next. All I know is a lot of stuff is happening. So we certainly have to do our part to protect this vital resource, because everything starts on the patches. Everything. Not only the fish that we're targeting, but almost all life revolves around those patch reefs. Okay, and at some stage, certainly all the snappers and groupers that we're going after, at some point in their life, they were living, feeding, thriving on the Florida Keys patch reef system. So that's how important it is from the very beginning all the way to trophy fish status. Okay, now, the patch reefs, you know, we're really talking about an area that is so long because, as I mentioned, it stretches from Key Largo all the way to Key West. You're obviously going to fish generally the area that you have access to. If you're in Marathon here, you primarily will only fish, you know, probably within 10 to 15 miles to the east or 10 to 15 miles to the west. That's a big span of reef to fish, 30 miles, you know, and if you're in Isle Morada, probably the same with Alligator Reef, and using that as a reference, you know, depending on where you are, you have plenty of area to fish. You can fish it year-round. That's another advantage to patch reef fishing, is it's a year-round fishery. There's no peak season. Certainly there are times of the year where, you know, different species are going to be more predominant. You know, in the spring and early summer, the mangrove snapper spawn is famous on the patch reefs. Guys really look forward to that, and you see a lot of big mangroves. But I'm going to tell you what, don't think that that's the only time you're going to see big mangrove snapper. The truth of the matter is, as of recently, the last 4 to 8 weeks, like, you know, the last month and two, we've caught a lot of big mangroves down here on the patch reefs. A lot bigger mangroves that I was catching during the spawn. So anytime you can fish these patches and get in on some quality fish, some quality mangrove snapper, okay? Again, the point I was making is you do have these time periods, though, that certain fisheries peak. Obviously, in the winter time, when that water temperature falls, the mackerel fishing heats up. This spring here has been absolutely phenomenal on the patch reefs for big cereal mackerel, the biggest cereal mackerel I've ever come across. And on the appropriate light tackle, these are amazing game fish, okay? They just sky on the baits, they demolish the ballyhoo right in front of you. I mean, really just a sensational fishery, you know, on the appropriate light tackles, getting in on these cereal mackerels. And of course, they're mixed in with the Spanish mackerel and the king mackerel. Yellowtails are always here. They're always here. The trick to catching the yellowtail is finding and fooling the flags, the bigger fish, and we're going to touch on that as well. But once again, it's a year-round game. So anytime that you're down, you know, either visiting or you're a local here in the Keys, getting in on the patch reef fishing is 365, okay? Another big advantage to that entire fishery. So we know accessibility, we know, you know, there are seasonal opportunities, but overall, just a phenomenal fishery. Now it's zeroing in on exactly where are we going to fish on those patches. I can tell you I use a lot of tools. One of those tools is Seymour mapping on my Ferrino TZ Touch. You know, that's really, really important. If you're not already using it, you're missing the boat. No pun intended, but you're missing the boat. Okay, it shows you incredible detail. I'm not going to sit here, you know, in a different seminar, I'll sit here and punch it up and you'll even be able to see it on the screen. But you get what I'm saying, okay? You're understanding me and you know what Seymour mapping is. You know, you're seeing a three-dimensional image of the bottom right on your Furuno chart plotters, okay? So really just an incredible tool because now I can pinpoint very specific areas. There's a lot of patches all up and down. I need to find distinguishing areas as to where the fish I'm looking for are going to be held up. What I look for are sharp 90-degree turns, exposed coral heads and rocks, but that have sharp ledges. Maybe there's, you know, an adjacent, we'll call it a valley in between two outcroppings. Look for structure within structure within structure, okay? Don't just look for something, because there's something everywhere, all right? Everywhere. So you really have to find those key areas. Also keep in mind that if you find an area where, for example, the mangrove snapper spawn, you've got in on that, or have caught big mangrove snapper in the past, save that spot. Save it really, really well, because they're going to be back there, okay? They will be back there. So good spots on the patch reefs, you know, generally are good spots season after season after season, not just that one time, right? There was something there that held the fish, and then couple that with the correct conditions, and it ignited a hot bite. And speaking of the correct conditions, first and foremost, you've got to have moving water, current. To be effective on the patch reefs, you have to have current. Okay, no current, no moving water. The chum is falling straight to the bottom. It's not flowing out behind the boat. Okay, you're not creating a huge chum slick other than a little bit of surface stuff with the oil. All right, short of that, it's not doing much other than, like I said, falling right to the bottom. So you have to have current, super important. Doesn't need to be screaming, but it needs to be moving. I have found incoming tide or outgoing tide, none of that seems to matter much as long as I've got moving water. That's the absolute key. And when that moving water is in the same direction as the wind, now you've really set the stage for perfect fishing. Okay, the chum is flowing out behind the boat, the wind is in my face, so that's holding the boat steady. Okay, I've got the bow right into the wind and the chum flowing right off the back of the boat. That is the ideal scenario for patch reef fishing. And if you position the boat in the proper area, ahead of, in front of the area that you want to fish, with those conditions, using either the fish it, drift it feature on the Furuno that'll help you with precise anchoring, or of course just using your own, skill set, and try and drop that anchor in the sand, not in the rock, plenty of scope, and come back to the leading edge of the area that you want to fish. At this point, the chum is flowing back across the patch reefs, and it's just going to start to fire things up from there, okay? But if you're off by just a little bit, it could spell disaster, okay? It could, really be a huge mistake. So making sure that the boat's in the proper position based on the relevant conditions is really, really important. And sometimes the wind and the tide, the wind and the current don't cooperate, right? The wind could be in my face, the current is not flowing off the side of the boat or off the back of the boat, it's flowing off the side of the boat, okay, or up off the bow. Sometimes you have wind against tide type situations, okay, and the wind is in one direction and the current's in the opposite direction. So that creates a problem. So you have to sometimes adjust for what you're going to find when you get out there. And you're not going to know that until you get there. There's no magic machine or button that I can punch up and tell me, hey, exactly how's the boat going to be laying when I get to this particular spot in 20 minutes. What's going to happen? It's not there yet because there are so many different factors that have to come into play. So take the necessary time to make sure that you're in that right position. And if you don't end up there at first, pick up and move. Do it as many times as you have to until you finally settle in to where your chum is flowing over the area that you want to fish based on the relevant conditions that you're dealt with. And that may mean fishing up off the bow, an advantage of an open center console type style boat because the wind is in our face, but the baits and the line are running up off the starboard bow with a screaming current. A lot of different scenarios, but you've got to be ready for them all. And you have to understand the different dynamics, the details of where those patches are in comparison or in consideration of what the conditions are doing around us. Take all of that into consideration before you ever even put a bait in the water, right? Because I'm telling you what, that's how important all of that is to your success, okay? It's vital, vital. On the topic of getting in the right position is anchoring, right? And as I mentioned earlier, I said, look, try and anchor in the sand. A lot of these rocks, coral heads, ledges, reefs, patches that we're fishing, they're surrounded by open pockets of sand, and it's easy to see. It really is. The water is generally very, very clear, and you can easily distinguish what's coral and what's sand. Obviously, try and drop your anchor in that sand, and again, back into an area. We generally will use a fortress anchor rigged with a breakaway, so if it did get hung up under a rock or something like that, you apply enough pressure from the opposite direction and it will break that anchor free and you'll be able to pull it out backwards. Okay, this way you don't do any damage and you get your anchor back and all that good stuff. So, take those precautions. There are times, I'm not going to lie, where I've taken a grapnel type anchor in heavy rock, dropped it, and, not a lot of scope, no chain on it at all because I don't want a chain to get wrapped around something on the bottom and that's not going to allow me to get it out. But there are times a grapnel type anchor may be a better fit based on the situation. We carry both, okay, because you, again, just don't know what you're going to find until you get out there. So be well prepared. Bring them both. Chum bags, okay, you've got to chum. Look, I don't care what time of day, I don't care what month of the year, I don't care about any of that. If you want to have success on Florida Keys patch reefs, you need to chum, okay, because I promise you, everyone is chumming, and the fish are not going to come to your boat just because you want them to if you're not chumming. It's not going to happen, okay, so in order to be successful, you have to chum. I prefer the chummy hoop. It's a big chum bag from the Valley Hoop, okay? And it's very easy to work with, easy to clean. Look, the 7-pound boxes of chum, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Stop thinking boxes, start thinking cases, okay? Cases. Every one of those boxes will last you approximately 30 to 60 minutes depending on the current. The faster the current, the more chum you're going to blow through. The slower the current, the less chum you're going to blow through. So somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes. You're not using a chum bag with the tiny little holes. We don't want to conserve our chum. We're not buying it to save it. We're buying it to disperse it, to use it as an attractant. The more of it that goes in the water, the more success you're going to encounter on the patch reef. So just keep that in mind. Big holes on the net, size of a nickel. Okay, so you're going to blow through a lot of that chum. Like I said, think one 7-pound box for every 30 to 60 minutes of fishing. So prepare accordingly. When I get to an area that I want to fish, my mind is made up. I'm going to fish this one particular spot. I've had success here recently. Whatever that factor went into me making that decision, I know I want to fish that spot. That's my first go-to spot. Chum bag goes in the water, 2 blocks of chum, do a couple of circles and figure 8s around the area while I'm looking on my Furuno sounder. Just want to see if I see any life. Doesn't matter to me if I do or don't. I got to be honest. I'm not looking for readings when I approach a patch reef in 30 feet of water. That's not what concerns me. I'm more concerned with the ledges and making sure that I get the boat in the proper position. Because I know that if I ultimately end up in the proper position, the fish will come. If I chum, they will come. I promise you. So in turn, I'm really focused on positioning. Once we're in position, we're anchored, that chum is flowing, okay? We've got moving water, little wind in our face. Everything is coming together perfectly at this point. And I do want to mention, before I move on any further, I mentioned I'm on a patch reef in 30 feet. Most of these patches are in 20 to 40 feet. Most of the really productive ones I find are in 26 to 34 feet, in that kind of range. Certainly the deeper you go, some of those deeper patches are going to be more productive, especially for the larger yellowtail snapper. 55 feet, 60 feet, on that falling edge. Why? Because, let me put it to you this way. If you can see the bottom, the yellowtails can see you. And if the yellowtail can see you, the big ones, the flags, they ain't biting, pal. Not gonna happen. They're not gonna bite. So in turn, you've got to fish water where you can't see the bottom, okay? And as long as you can't see the bottom, then you've got a chance of scoring those bigger flag yellowtail snappers. So just keep that in mind as a tip. Nevertheless, the vast majority of the patches are in that 28 to 34 foot range, somewhere in those 30s. We're anchored up, we're chumming, we're in position, okay? We're not fishing yet. Not at all. We're not fishing yet. Okay, we're going to give it a little bit of time. We want this chum to build. I've got a 40-foot boat that I just planted right on top of the area that I want to fish. Right on top of it, this giant boat that's longer than the water is deep. Okay, you don't think everything below the boat's going to be shit scared? Excuse my language, but at least for a minute? Yes, so let things just settle down. Let everything settle down. Let the boat become part of the environment. Let the boat become structured to the fish. Before you know it, they'll be hiding under the boat rather than away from the boat. So be very patient, okay? If you get there, you put chum in the water, and suddenly 3, 4, 5 people are putting lines in and baits in, forget it. Forget it. You're not going to get a fire bite going. You may pick off those smaller yellowtails that we talked about earlier that we don't like catching, all right? But you're never really going to get the quality fish. So, be very patient. Super, super important, okay? Now, we carry a lot of different tackle, but I've really narrowed it down to 3 outfits. 3 outfits that I bring, 3 classes of outfits, I should say, not 3 outfits. But it's always a good idea to have a wide variety of tackle, because the thing about patch reef fishing is you just never know. You just never know what you're going to encounter. Look, it is not uncommon here in the Florida Keys for a dry cobia to swim up in your chum slick when you're patch reef fishing. 50 to 80 pounds. It happens regularly, okay? Most guys know it. Some guys don't even know it. They never even saw that giant fish swimming through their slick. But it happens. You can't take a little yellowtail rod and throw a bait at a 40-pound cove and think you're going to stop that fish from an anchored boat with 10-pound test and land them. It's just not going to happen, okay? You can't put enough heat on them. Smoker kings will dump a tiny reel in before you could even figure out what just happened. Your reel's empty, and you got a 50-pound king mackerel flying away at 50 miles an hour. These things happen on the patch reefs. They happen regularly. So, you need to understand that not every outfit is going to get the job done in every scenario. So certainly be well equipped. But even when you are well equipped, always be ready for surprises, because that's the one advantage of fishing the Florida Keys patch reefs are these surprises.
Fresh bait is vital in today's highly pressured fisheries, and no one makes it easier to catch live bait than the Ballyhoop. With a complete line of collapsible hoop nets and accessories, the Ballyhoop is a must-have for every angler. Simply deploy the Ballyhoop and watch the magic. With the Ballyhoop, catching live bait is clean, fast, and simple. Ask for the Ballyhoop at your local tackle shop or visit us online to find a dealer near you.
It almost seems like every single patch reef trip, something surprises you, whatever it is. And you don't know what that might be. Could be big muttons on the bottom, Could be a big black grouper or two. It could be something higher up in the water column. You don't know, because everything feeds on the reef. It doesn't all live there, but it visits there to eat. Okay? Because the entire patch reef system, if you can follow it from the microorganisms up to the little shrimp and crustaceans and the crabs that all live inside there, to small bait fish and juvenile finfish, and follow the food chain up, baby. Everything is on the patch reefs at some time or another. It's Publix, okay? It's Publix with the front doors wide open and nobody at the registers. Just go do your thing. Do it. Have fun. All the toilet paper is going to be gone first, I guarantee it. Anyhow, a lot of opportunity on those patches. I just cannot stress that enough. So let's get into the tackle. The first thing that's going to happen, you're obviously going to see the yellowtails right behind the boat. And that might be your target. So if you really want to catch those, yellowtails, and sometimes there's certainly a lot of keepers, 12, 14 inches, up to 16 inches is not uncommon to be eating out of the chum bag. At that point, you've got to have a light spinner. You've got to have a light spinner. Chaos Gold, 7'6", 8 to 17 pound line, incredibly light, incredibly sensitive. Look, nothing super fancy. It's not a $900 carbon fiber, graphite super stick. It's a, composite, or actually I think this is graphite, but whatever it is, super affordable, very versatile, 8 to 17 pound class rod. It's matched to a Shimano Stratic 4000. It's a perfect little spinning reel for this fishery. Okay, very, very smooth drag. I think that's the most important thing about it, is that smooth drag, because these fish pull. Not only those yellowtails, everything's relative. Remember, we're fishing very light line, fragile, soft rods, you know what I mean? These fish pull. And when you hook something bigger, the bigger Cero mackerels, anything like that, you're really going to have a great time catching those fish on this kind of outfit. Okay, we've got the reel loaded, the Stratic 4000, with something very, very important, very clear. This is actually 12-pound diamond line in the super clear. And, again, I'm going to kind of just bring that a little bit closer. I want you to see the color of that line right there. Very, very stealthy. They call it super clear, and it really is. And that's what's very, very important, is that line be practically invisible in the water column. 10 or 12 pound mono on this reel is perfect. If you're targeting the yellowtails, you don't need the braid. They often get spooked by the braid. If you do have braid on your reel, put at least 50 feet of this super clear, of the 10 or 12 pound diamond line, the super clear, on top of the braid, okay? Stay away from that braid in this scenario if you're specifically looking for those yellowtails. Even with the clear, I also add some fluorocarbon. I'll take a piece of diamond presentation, 20 pound, okay? 20 pound test is exactly what I'm putting on for my light tackle yellowtail outfit. So I've got 12-pound mono on the Stratic 4000, tied to about 10 feet of the 20-pound diamond fluorocarbon. I use a small little blood knot to combine the two. No swivel, no terminal tackle. It's incredibly stealthy. And that's the key, is stealth. To fool these yellowtails, you've got to go light and you've got to go stealthy. There's times when, if you have exceptionally clear water, it's not uncommon for some of the top charter boat guys to drop down to 10 or 12 pound fluorocarbon. So instead of 12 pound mono and 20 fluoro, they'll fish the 12 pound mono and either tie directly to a hook or go to even 10 pound fluoro, just to reduce that signature even further. This is the outfit that I'll have with either a very small jig or just a very small hook, very stealthy. I'm going to take a fresh piece of cut bait I'm gonna pop it in the water next to the boat, and I'm gonna feed it out at the same rate that that chum is flowing. I don't need a giant piece of bait. I'm trying to fool these yellowtails into believing that what I'm offering them is literally just came out of that chum bag. So just very, very stealthy. I'm feeding it out, feeding it out, feeding it out, feeding it out until I feel that fish pick up and run. Okay, he's going to pick it up. You're going to have that finger on your line. You're paying attention to your rod tip. You're looking at that line going into water. Okay, it's a very easy fishery, but success requires that you really pay attention. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. So I'm looking at that rod tip. I'm feeding it out. Boom, he's going, going, going. You know, you can lock it up. Again, obviously that's open. He's going, going, going. You can lock it up and boom, just drive that little hook home on that jig, or if you're just fishing a small hook. And it's a perfect rod, like I said, for those yellowtail snappers, smaller mangrove snappers, but just a light spinner. It's the core of the fishery, you know. Now from there, I beef it up a little. I'll bring a little bit of a heavier outfit, and this is really where there's a lot of options, you know, depending on what tackle you have or what you'd like to do. But I went from the 7.5 foot spinner that I fish for the yellowtail into a little bit of a heavier spinner that I can handle bigger fish on. Bigger mangrove snapper. If I hook a mutton on this rod, I can handle them. I've got more line capacity. It's a 6'6" spinning outfit. It's actually a carbon fiber rod, okay, matched to a Shimano Twin Power 5000. Absolutely beautiful little reel. It's super smooth. I've got it loaded with 20-pound braid, diamond braid. So I have a ton of line capacity with this particular outfit. It's got a lot of drag. This is not anywhere near what this is, okay? This is light tackle, okay? I really, really light as far as I'm concerned. It's the lightest gear that I'll fish. This is substantially heavier, and I can use this for a lot of different fisheries. I'll use this same outfit to throw chunk baits and lures at dolphin, Cero mackerel. That's how I have it rigged right now. It's a great outfit for Cero mackerel with a little bit of wire and just a short little stinger rig. And we were just recently out and filmed the Cero show. Hopefully you watched it already. Oh, actually it hasn't even aired yet. It's coming out soon. You'll love it. It's called Hero to Cero, or Cero to Hero, something really cool. Lot of exciting action. And again, this is the outfit that we used a lot for that particular fishing. But it also gives me an opportunity to fish a bait on the bottom, a bigger bait, and having a little bit more insurance that if I hook a bigger fish, I can handle them. So it's a medium class, you know, that's what we'll kind of call it. And then finally is the rod that I really enjoy fishing the most. This also is 6'6", matched to a Shimano Twin Power 8000, 30-pound braid, 30-pound fluorocarbon leader with a jig head. Okay, and now this is the rod. I'm dropping a bigger bait to the bottom, locked up, my fingers right on the line, and I'm waiting for something big to grab my ballyhoo or to grab my pinfish. And we're going to talk about baits in a moment, but where I can hit them hard, fast, and have that stopping power, because this is the rod where I'm looking for the groupers and I'm looking for the big mutton snappers. And don't think that you're not going to have opportunities at 12 to 18-pound muttons and 20 to 30-pound black grouper in 30 feet of water. You absolutely will. You probably already have. The guys that know what they're doing and have gotten a little bit lucky have been able to land a bunch of those fish, and some of you have probably never landed a single one and never even thought you had them. You get a big bite, you lose them, and you're like, shark. That shark in my butt. 18-pound mutton just cleaned your clock, pal. You just don't want to admit it. Okay, so it's happened to all of us, and if you patch reef fish enough, it's going to happen to you too. So you need something with some stopping power. Okay, you really do, something with some stopping power. So those three rods really sum up the tackle that we fish. And it's a great fishery that enables me to fish spinning outfits. I like fishing spinning outfits. And we're all always fishing conventionals when we're jig fishing, deep dropping, sword fishing, trolling, wahoo fishing. It's all conventionals. In this fishery, spinners are really enjoyable to fish, and anybody can do it, regardless of age or skill level, because the tackle is also very light, okay, very light. Now, let's get back to the baits for a second. Remember, it's a virtual trip. We're set up, we're anchored, we're chumming, and chum has been flowing this entire time that you and I have been speaking, right? It's just flowing and flowing. We still haven't put a single bait in the water yet. All we've done is just let this build and build and build. And first the smaller yellowtails, and then they get bigger. So it'll just keep building. The longer that you're there, the longer that you're chumming, the further your chum slick is going to flow, and the more life that it's going to attract. That's it. It's common sense. It's not rocket science. It's common sense, okay? So now is bait. We fish two baits, okay, when we are patch reef fishing. Pinfish is one of my absolute favorites. I'll fish a whole pinfish live, small to medium, even a small or large, okay, but nothing real XL. The smaller ones, I just like them better because those bigger mangroves can get them. Or you can cut that pinfish in half or even in thirds. The key is fresh, so a fresh dead pinfish cut into pieces, or a live whole pinfish. Okay, absolute killer bait. Everything on the patch reefs eats them. It's a bigger bait, okay, and it really just accounts for a lot of big fish. We catch our pinfish with pinfish traps. You'll see a lot of videos on our streaming site, FloridaSportFishingTV Plus. There's all sorts of videos on there that include content on how we catch our pinfish. And then the second bait, and perhaps equally as effective, if not more, are live and fresh ballyhoo. I'm telling you, everything on the patch reefs eats ballyhoo. Everything. It's a staple, there's no question. Either fished whole, fished, plug, where we cut the head and the tail off and you just have a plug, or sometimes you can cut them into pieces, again, depending on what you want to do with them. Now, I gotta tell you, I have to be honest, I'm not really good with a cast net. I've never really been good with a cast net. Can I throw it? Yes. Can I catch the bait? Yes. Am I like these guys down here that throw these massive, giant pancakes with every throw? That's not me. I'm not gonna lie. But you know what? I'm not trying to catch hundreds of ballyhoo. I'm not trying to, sink the boat with ballyhoo. When I am patch reef fishing, I'm trying to catch a couple of dozen baits, and oftentimes I'll go through 2 or 3 at a time. I only need a few at a time. And I want the entire process to be as easy as possible, and that's why I use the ballyhoo, okay, for a number of reasons, and I want you to understand what the benefits of this are. First of all, you can see, and this isn't a commercial for ballyhoo, for the ballyhoo, I just want you to understand the simplicity of this. Rather than whipping out a big, cast net out of a bucket, here I just, boom, that's it, I'm ready. What did that take? Literally 3 seconds, okay, I'm ready. As you can see, it's a net, it's got a float on the top, if you're unfamiliar with this, right? I'll deploy this over the side. This float will keep this ballyhoo in the correct orientation. This is going to drift back, all the way back into the back of the chum slick. Okay, and I've got a long rope attached to it. Very simple. This again is not very complicated, and I've extended my rope. You can see I've just tied some cord right to, whatever length that they provide to you. I've made mine extra long. And sometimes I'll even add, more. As a matter of fact, I see this is actually the length of rope that's included with this. I'll add, a dock line or whatever on the boat, because oftentimes the ballyhoo will be further back in the slick and you just can't get them to come real close to the boat. Sometimes that'll happen. So don't be afraid to let that float further back. Now, here's the key to using this that's going to help you. First of all, you're not throwing a big net, so it's very easy. There's no other way around it. It's super, super easy to deploy. You don't have to throw a big net. You're not spooking everything in sight. Remember, you're reef fishing, you're chumming, you're building this whole food chain. And now you want me to take a giant cast net and throw it and spook everything in sight? Everything I just worked so hard for to build? I don't want to do that. And I don't need to do that in this scenario. All I'm trying to do is catch the bait that I need for that particular day. So once that chum is flowing, we'll deploy the valley hoop and we'll leave it back there. We'll leave it back there tied to a cleat. It's not getting in the way. It's not bothering anybody. But what it's doing is it's becoming one with the environment. And the fish, the ballyhoo, are becoming acclimated to it. It's just melting into the environment. It's not being introduced, pulled out, reintroduced, pulled out, reintroduced. No, it's just there. It's just there at the back of the chum slick. You're chumming, okay? The ballyhoo are gonna build. I promise you, the bait will come. The ballyhoo are gonna build and build and build and get right up close to the back of the boat. At that point, you simply take the line on, on the ballyhoo, and you just drag it through the water. I mean, this is, there's no easier way to say it. You just drag it through the water and scoop up the bait that you need. It's so simple, it's stupid. It's like, I honestly can't believe somebody didn't think about this, even longer ago. So really a great tool, and we catch the bait as we need it. It's that simple. And then when you're done, you just fold it up and put it away. Now, we're there. We've caught our bait, okay? We have some pinfish that we brought with us, potentially. Sometimes we'll go fish those patches and bring no bait, because that's how sure I am that the ballyhoo will show up and I'll be able to catch them with the ballyhoo. So really, really a sure thing. Nevertheless, now we start fishing. And we may start by introducing one line at a time. Maybe one person start fishing, and then a few minutes later, a second person, and ultimately no more than three. 3 people fishing is all that it takes. And depending on what's happening, we'll target the relevant, the relevant species. If we have some nice yellowtails behind the boat, you could target the yellowtail. If it's mackerel season and there are zero mackerel around, take a fresh ballyhoo, rig it on, a stinger rig, throw it out there and feed it out, and the big zeros will just blow up on it. Super exciting fishing. Okay, really, really cool. I love those zeros. You can fish for the yellowtail. Now maybe it's time to try and look for some bigger fish on the bottom. Okay? You've been fishing for an hour, 2 hours. Now it's time to fish the bottom, looking for the muttons, looking for a grouper, and this is where we're going to turn to jig heads. Okay, that's it. I've got my container. It's loaded in jig heads, everything from, 1/4 ounce, 3/8, 1/2 ounce, 5/8, 3/4, all the way on up to 1 ounce. They're just a boxing style type, a boxing glove style type jig head. There's that shape right there. It looks like a boxing glove. Obviously that's why they call it that. And as they get larger, the hook size increases. So not only do you need to consider the weight of the jig itself, but also consider the hook that it's attached to. Right? So it's because it's obviously a 2-part kind of gig. We don't fish anything other than the jig heads. Okay, where we're fishing the bottom. We don't fish the fish finder rigs with a sliding egg sinker, a dropper loop, multiple hook chicken rigs, anything like that. Don't do it, because you're just going to get hung up in the bottom. You could potentially spook the fish, and you don't need to. The most effective rig for fishing the Florida Keys patch reefs are jig heads. All you do is, as I mentioned, adjust the size of the jig head to match the tackle for the species and the technique that you're targeting. I can take, if there's a lot of current, I can take a really small jig head. This probably weighs, a 1/16 of an ounce. Nothing. You can see just a little bit of lead right on that hook right there. Not much, at all. Just a little bit of weight. And tie that on that light spinner feed a bait out, get it a little bit lower in the water column for the yellowtails. I can then step it up a little bit, go to maybe a 3/8 ounce jig head, larger hook, as you can see right there, okay, larger hook, 3/8 ounce, and put it on the medium class spinner and drop that down to the bottom for the mangroves. Or, again, I could step it up, take a live pinfish or a live ballyhoo, put it on, a 3/4 inch jig head, bigger hook, heavier leader, heavier line, drop that to the bottom. So I'm specifically fishing for different species using different techniques. And I don't want to say different species because that's the one thing about Florida Keys patch reef fishing is the variety. You don't know what's going to eat your bait. I drop a pinfish to the bottom. I'm hoping it's a big mutton snapper, but it could absolutely be a big mangrove snapper, which I'm perfectly fine with, or a black grouper, or a red grouper, or a yellow jack, African pompano, all sorts of stuff. The list goes on and on. Same with the ballyhoo. And that's the key I want to stress. If you're serious about catching the bigger fish on the patch reefs, and this is probably the key takeaway that I want you to remember. Stay away from this altogether. We talked a lot about it here, okay? We talked about that option of fishing for the yellowtail, nothing wrong with it. But if you're serious about, maximizing a quality fish on the patch reefs, stay away from the light gear. Because when you do hook those big mangroves and muttons, if you're fishing that light 10, 12 pound class tackle, you'll be lucky as, whatever, to catch one. All right, they're just going to clean your clock, especially a big mutton. You just can't stop them. So stay away from the light stuff. Stay away from the small baits. Fish a big bait on a heavier outfit, a live pinfish. A small yellowtail is not going to eat a live pinfish. You can't get him down his throat. Okay, you're going to need a big mangrove snapper or a big mutton snapper to suck that bait down. Same with a live ballyhoo or a big ballyhoo plug. Don't be afraid to fish a big bait. Really, really important. Okay, if you want to catch the bigger fish on the patch reefs, that's how we do it. That's our, kind of go-to. Now, understand, look, you're not going to get as many bites because if you target all of the small yellowtail with smaller jigs and stuff like that, you're gonna be busy all day long. So is it quantity or quality that you're looking for? I prefer the quality over the quantity, but somewhere along the line there's a happy balance for you as well. But be prepared for anything. If the right conditions don't come together, look, if you don't have moving water and wind in the right direction or the fish aren't cooperating, give it 60 minutes, okay? An hour, 90 minutes at the very most, and then get out of there. Get out. Get out. Within 60 to 90 minutes, 60 minutes, the bite's on. And either it's building and, you're catching the fish that you're looking for, certainly signs of those fish, and it just looks like it's continuing to build and build and build. Stay. Don't pick up and leave. But if nothing is changing and the intensity, right, of what's happening behind the boat doesn't increase in 60 minutes of chumming, the life doesn't build, move on, because you're just not going to ultimately find what you're really looking for, which is those bigger snappers on the bottom. So that's the whole ticket with patch reef fishing here in the Florida Keys. It's a great fishery. Anybody can get in on this any time of the year, any age or skill level. But to maximize on it, you've got to be prepared. You got to understand what you're looking for. You've got to have some tools, okay, that'll simplify the process. This is not, the ballyhoo, just as an example, I've heard guys kind of say, well, no, I could just throw cast net. But that's the wrong tool. It's the wrong thing because you're going to spook everything, Look, you may catch some baits in the beginning and then need more baits as the day progresses. You just never know what's going to happen. That's the right tool right there. And that's just one of many tools that we use in order to maximize our time on the Florida Keys patch reefs. And that's what I want you to do as well. Be as successful of an angler as you possibly can. That being said, I appreciate you sitting in on our seminar here, on our Florida Keys Patch Reef seminar. We've got a lot more great seminars coming up in the near future. In the meantime, you can catch up on 400 instructional videos, complete episodes of Florida Sport Fishing TV, all of the episodes of Captain Mike's Rigging Station, our entire Extreme Seminar series, rigging station and pros tips, recipes, everything that you could ask and everything that you could want about fishing here in Florida and in the Florida Keys. So check out Florida Sport Fishing TV Plus. The web address is FSFTV.com. Free trial as well. I mean, it's an absolute no-brainer. Okay, it really is. So check it out, and I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to seeing you on the water.